What if every single immigrant left the UK tomorrow? Sounds like a wild thought, right? But imagine the consequences. According to a study, 1 in 8 people living in the UK today is born outside the country. That's over 9 million people, a number larger than the population of some entire countries. Now picture what would happen if they were suddenly gone. The economy would plummet, public services would collapse, and the UK could face a social disaster. But that's just the tip of the iceberg. The NHS could grind to a halt. Entire industries would be left in ruins. And what about cultural diversity? One of the UK's greatest strengths. It would vanish overnight. But the consequences don't stop there. Think about your daily life. Higher prices for food, longer waits in hospitals, fewer workers to support essential services. It sounds extreme, right? It's hard to believe. But experts say that without immigrants, the UK would struggle to survive in the modern world. So, what would happen if we lost a massive chunk of our population? Would we even recognise the UK we know today? Stick around, because we're about to reveal 10 shocking consequences that could unfold. And you won't believe how deeply they would affect you, your family, and the whole country. The truth might surprise you, so keep watching. Number 1. Economic decline. Imagine waking up one morning to find that every single immigrant has left the UK. The first noticeable change would be a drastic drop in the economy. Immigrants aren't just a small part of the workforce. They play a critical role across almost every sector. They work in healthcare, construction, technology, hospitality, and retail, often filling jobs that locals can't or won't take. Let's break it down. The tax contributions of immigrants, who make up roughly 13% of the population, are substantial. They contribute billions to the public coffers through income taxes, national insurance, and consumer spending. According to studies from the Migration Advisory Committee, the contribution of immigrants to the UK economy has been positive, with recent data suggesting that every year they contribute more in taxes than they receive in public services. Without immigrants, industries reliant on lower paid labour would struggle. For instance, in hospitality and agriculture, immigrant workers make up a significant portion of the workforce. With them gone, the cost of labour would rise dramatically. This would lead to higher prices for services like cleaning, restaurant meals, and even fruit and vegetables. Consequently, inflation would spike, and the average Brit might find themselves paying more for everyday goods and services. Even more concerning, the financial services sector, which forms the backbone of the UK economy, could see a slowdown due to the lack of skilled professionals in finance, tech, and engineering. The UK's status as a global financial hub could be at risk. As wages in other sectors rise to fill the gaps left by immigrants, businesses might start shifting jobs overseas, seeking a cheaper and more reliable labour pool. The loss of a skilled workforce and rising costs would undoubtedly trigger a slower economic recovery, especially after events like Brexit and the pandemic. Number 2. Shrinking workforce and skills gap. Without immigrants, one of the most immediate and glaring effects would be the significant shortage of skilled workers in key sectors. From doctors and nurses to engineers and construction workers, immigrants play a pivotal role in filling gaps across industries where there simply aren't enough native workers to meet demand. For example, the NHS, National Health Service, relies heavily on foreign-born professionals. It's estimated that around 1 in 4 doctors and 13% of nurses working in the NHS are from overseas. If these workers were to leave, the healthcare system would face a severe staffing crisis, making it difficult to provide essential services. Longer waiting times, fewer appointments, and overwhelmed emergency rooms would likely become the new norm. In sectors like technology and engineering, immigrants also make up a large portion of the workforce. Many immigrants possess highly specialised skills that are hard to find locally. Without them, companies might find themselves struggling to innovate, and the UK could see a decline in the technology-driven industries that are vital to its economic growth. The startup ecosystem in cities like London, often dubbed Silicon Roundabout, would also be at risk, as many entrepreneurs and skilled workers are from abroad. Construction, another sector crucial to the UK's infrastructure, relies heavily on migrant labour. Immigrants fill roles in building, roofing and plumbing, jobs that many locals either avoid or don't have the skills to do. If these workers were gone, construction projects could face delays and housing shortages might worsen. Property prices would increase as demand outweighs supply. In short, without immigrants, the UK's workforce would shrink, and key industries would be forced to adapt to a skills gap that would significantly slow economic progress and productivity. It would take years, if not decades, to train enough local workers to fill the void. Number 3. Reduced cultural diversity. One of the most immediate and noticeable changes, if all immigrants were to leave the UK, would be the dramatic loss of cultural diversity. The UK is a mosaic of different cultures, traditions, and languages, thanks to the contributions of immigrants who have come from all corners of the globe. From the vibrant Diwali celebrations in Leicester to the delicious array of international cuisines available at every street corner, immigrants have helped shape the UK's identity in profound ways. Without them, the UK would face a significant homogenisation of its cultural landscape. Imagine a country where local communities, once rich in diversity, become more uniform. Cultural events, music festivals, and art exhibitions that showcase a blend of global traditions would decrease in number and scale. The absence of this cultural fusion would make the UK less dynamic and exciting, particularly in urban centres like London, Birmingham, and Manchester, places that are known for their multicultural vibrancy. Cuisine would also suffer. The UK's food scene, one of the most diverse in the world, would lose its rich international offerings. Takeaway favourites like Indian curry, Chinese dim sum, and Lebanese kebabs might disappear or become less accessible. Restaurants would be forced to pivot to more mainstream, local food options, and the variety that we take for granted would be much harder to come by. Beyond food and celebrations, the UK's social fabric would also be affected. Immigrants don't just bring new tastes and traditions, they bring a fresh perspective on social issues, politics, and daily life. The exchange of ideas from different cultures promotes a broader worldview and encourages tolerance and understanding. Without this, the UK could face increased social isolation and a decline in global influence, both culturally and diplomatically. In essence, the UK's unique cultural richness would fade, leaving behind a much more limited and less vibrant society. The UK would no longer be the same globally recognised melting pot it is today. Number 4. Impact on public services. Another significant impact of immigrants leaving the UK would be the immense pressure on public services, particularly in sectors like healthcare, education, and social services, where immigrant workers make up a crucial portion of the workforce. Let's start with the NHS, where immigrants are indispensable. Around 1 in 5 doctors and over 10% of nurses in the UK are born outside the country. This influx of foreign-born professionals helps to fill staffing gaps in both rural and urban areas, where there are shortages of trained locals. If all immigrants were to leave, the UK would face an acute shortage of healthcare workers, severely affecting patient care. Hospitals would likely experience longer waiting times, fewer available specialists, and overwhelmed emergency services. Additionally, the cost of hiring replacements locally could rise, leading to increased healthcare expenses for the government and patients alike. The education sector would also feel the strain. Immigrant teachers, particularly in schools serving diverse communities, play a key role in providing specialised knowledge and language support for students. A significant portion of educators in the UK are immigrants, especially in areas with high levels of ethnic diversity. If these teachers left, it would not only create staffing shortages, but could also lead to a decline in educational outcomes, particularly for students who require extra support. The loss of teachers, classroom assistants, and other educational professionals would result in larger class sizes, fewer resources, and a reduced quality of education. In social services, immigrants often work as social workers, carers, and in roles that support vulnerable populations. Without these workers, there would be delays in processing claims, a reduction in the quality of support for the elderly, and fewer professionals available to manage social housing or child protection services. In short, the absence of immigrant workers in the public sector would create widespread service disruptions, leaving citizens to feel the strain in their daily lives, with longer wait times, fewer available services, and higher costs. Number 5. Increased cost of living. If all immigrants were to leave the UK, one of the immediate financial consequences would be a sharp increase in the cost of living. Immigrants are not only vital contributors to the workforce, but they also help keep certain costs in check by filling lower wage jobs that many locals are unwilling to take. Without this labour force, industries would face wage inflation and a supply shortage, which would inevitably drive prices higher. Take the hospitality industry, for example. Immigrants make up a significant portion of the staff in restaurants, hotels, and catering services. These workers often take on roles that are less desirable, like waiting tables, cleaning, and kitchen work, at lower wages. If these workers were gone, businesses would have to offer higher wages to attract local workers. While this sounds good for those workers, the cost of labour would increase, and businesses would pass these additional expenses on to consumers. A simple meal out, for example, could become significantly more expensive due to increased staffing costs. Similarly, in agriculture, many immigrants fill seasonal roles, such as picking fruits and vegetables. These jobs are physically demanding and often involve long hours, making them less attractive to local workers. Without immigrant labour, food production costs would rise, as businesses are forced to raise wages to attract workers. This would lead to higher grocery prices, affecting everything from fresh produce to packaged goods. Even in sectors like childcare, construction, and cleaning, the absence of immigrants would result in increased wages to attract local workers and, consequently, higher costs for consumers. Rent prices could also rise as landlords, facing increased maintenance and service fees, would likely pass on these additional expenses. In short, without immigrants, prices across the board would skyrocket. The UK's cost of living would rise drastically, hitting everyone in the wallet, and making everyday goods and services less affordable for the average citizen. Number 6. Decline in innovation. Innovation is the lifeblood of any advanced economy, and the UK's thriving sectors in technology, science, and business would take a massive hit if all immigrants were to leave. Immigrants, particularly in industries like tech, engineering, and research, are crucial to driving progress and new ideas. Without them, the UK could see a decline in its ability to innovate, which would stifle growth and global competitiveness. Immigrants bring a wealth of diverse experiences, perspectives, and skill sets that fuel creative problem-solving and fresh ideas. Take Silicon Roundabout in East London, for instance, a thriving hub of tech startups. Many of these companies are led by immigrants or employ foreign-born workers who possess specialised skills in areas like software development, artificial intelligence, and data science. If these skilled professionals were to leave, UK-based tech companies would struggle to find local talent to replace them, which could lead to slower development, fewer breakthroughs, and the migration of businesses to countries with a more abundant talent pool. The science and research sectors would also face a significant blow. Universities, which are often hubs of cutting-edge research, rely heavily on international scholars, researchers, and PhD students. These individuals not only contribute to groundbreaking discoveries, but also enhance the UK's standing as a global leader in innovation. Without these intellectual contributions, the UK's scientific output could decrease, and the country could risk falling behind in the race for medical, environmental, and technological advancements. Moreover, the creative industries, from music to film, would lose much of their vibrancy. Immigrants play a key role in shaping the UK's cultural identity, whether in artistic expression or entrepreneurial ventures in industries like fashion and media. In short, the absence of immigrants would severely limit the UK's capacity for innovation, leading to slower economic growth, fewer breakthroughs, and a decline in global influence as a leader in creativity and technology. Number 7. Strained social systems. Another significant consequence of immigrants leaving the UK would be the severe strain on social systems, particularly welfare, pensions, and support services. Immigrants are often seen as contributors to these systems, paying taxes that fund public services and providing a buffer for an ageing population. Without them, the UK could face financial instability in critical social support areas. First, let's consider welfare and public benefits. Immigrants generally contribute more to the system than they receive in benefits. According to research, immigrants, particularly those from the European Union, tend to pay more in taxes and national insurance contributions than they claim in state support. In fact, they help sustain the public services that benefit everyone, including the elderly, the unemployed, and those with disabilities. Without these contributions, the burden would fall more heavily on the native population, creating financial strain on the government and higher taxes for everyone. In terms of pensions, the UK is already grappling with an ageing population. As the number of retirees increases and fewer young workers enter the workforce, the burden on the pension system grows. Immigrants, especially younger ones, have been filling a crucial role in balancing this demographic shift by contributing to pension funds and social security systems. Without them, the government would have to rely more heavily on a shrinking native workforce, leading to potential pension cuts or the need to raise the retirement age. Additionally, social care would face significant challenges. Immigrants play a vital role in providing care for the elderly and disabled, particularly in home care and assisted living facilities. With fewer workers in the care sector, services could be delayed or reduced, leading to a decline in care quality and greater strain on families. The absence of immigrant workers could lead to increased waiting lists and a reduction in services, affecting the most vulnerable in society. In essence, without immigrants, the UK's social safety nets would be under immense pressure, leading to increased taxes, reduced services, and a potential welfare crisis. Number 8. Impact on demographic balance. One of the most profound effects of all immigrants leaving the UK would be a dramatic shift in the country's demographic balance. The UK's population is already ageing, with a growing number of elderly citizens and a declining birth rate. Immigrants, particularly younger individuals, have been a crucial part of balancing this demographic equation. Without them, the country could face an even more pronounced ageing population, which would have wide-reaching consequences for the economy and society. Let's start with the workforce. Immigrants tend to be younger and more likely to participate in the labour market, often filling jobs in key sectors such as healthcare, construction, and technology. If they were to leave, the UK would experience a sharp reduction in the working age population, putting a huge strain on the economy. Fewer workers would mean lower productivity, slower economic growth, and a smaller tax base to support public services. As the working age population shrinks, fewer people would be available to care for the elderly or contribute to essential services, leading to a significant gap in workforce capacity. The pension system would also face considerable challenges. With fewer young people contributing to pensions, there would be less funding available to support an ageing population. This could lead to pension shortfalls and increase pressure on public resources to care for an older generation. The government may have to raise taxes or adjust pension plans to make up the difference. Socially, an ageing population with fewer working-age people to support it could create a greater divide between the elderly and younger generations. Intergenerational tension could rise as younger individuals face higher taxes and fewer resources to support their own families, while older citizens may struggle with fewer workers available to assist them in healthcare and other services. In short, Without immigrants, the UK would experience a demographic imbalance that would make it even more challenging to sustain social and economic systems, leading to a nation struggling to meet the needs of its aging population. Number 9. International relationships strained. If all immigrants were to suddenly leave the UK, the country would likely face a significant strain on its international relationships. Immigration policies and the treatment of foreign nationals are key components of a nation's diplomatic ties. The UK, with its history of diverse immigration, would undoubtedly encounter political and economic repercussions from countries around the world. This would have a ripple effect on the UK's ability to navigate global relationships, trade deals, and international collaborations. The first area to feel the impact would be diplomacy. Countries that have long-standing historical, cultural, or economic ties with the UK, many of which rely on immigration as a form of bilateral exchange, might view the departure of immigrants as a betrayal or a sign of unwelcoming attitudes. This could cause diplomatic friction and strain foreign relations, especially with countries that see their citizens contributing to the UK's economy and culture. Nations with large expatriate populations in the UK, such as India, Pakistan, and Poland, might feel disrespected and could respond by limiting collaboration in areas like defence, technology, or education. Trade relations would also be impacted. Many global trade agreements rely on goodwill and collaboration between countries, and immigrants often play a vital role in establishing those connections. For instance, immigrants from the EU and beyond often help facilitate trade deals, bringing knowledge of foreign markets and languages, while helping to build partnerships with businesses abroad. Without these workers, the UK could find itself at a disadvantage in international negotiations, as its global influence and ability to navigate complex relationships would diminish. Furthermore, the UK's role in global organisations like the UN, NATO, and the World Trade Organization could be weakened, as the country's diminished cultural diversity and loss of talent may undermine its diplomatic effectiveness. In short, the departure of immigrants could put the UK in a position where it has to rebuild relationships with both old and new allies, impacting everything from trade to international policy. Ultimately, the UK would face economic and political isolation, with consequences that could extend beyond trade, affecting its standing on the world stage. Number 10. The emotional and social impact. Beyond the economic, political, and social changes, the emotional and social impact of all immigrants leaving the UK would be profound. The UK, known for its multiculturalism and diverse communities, would face a significant shift in its identity, potentially leading to a social divide and an erosion of social cohesion. The absence of immigrants would not only affect the economy, but also leave a lasting emotional scar on communities, making the country feel less connected and less united. For many people, immigrants are not just workers. They are neighbours, friends, and members of the community. Their contributions to the arts, sports, and local culture are woven into the fabric of daily life. Imagine the empty spaces left behind in neighbourhoods, schools, and local events. No more local cultural festivals, no more cooking classes, or international collaborations that have enriched the UK. The sudden absence of this cultural exchange could leave people feeling more isolated in their own communities. Social divisions could also deepen, as communities that once thrived on diversity might struggle with feelings of loss and resentment. The departure of immigrants could amplify existing prejudices and stereotypes, leading to a rise in xenophobia or nationalism, as the remaining population might feel threatened by the change in their environment. With fewer immigrants contributing to the shared public good, there could also be a decline in a sense of collective responsibility and a rise in individualism. On a personal level, many British citizens who have close relationships with immigrants would face the emotional pain of losing friends, colleagues, and family members. The departure would create a sense of grief, not just because of the loss of individuals, but because of the loss of shared experiences, stories, and connections that help to define national identity. In conclusion, the UK would face a society divided emotionally and socially. The removal of immigrants could leave lasting scars on the nation's sense of belonging and identity, creating deep emotional wounds that would be difficult to heal. So, what would happen if all immigrants left the UK? The consequences would be far-reaching, affecting nearly every aspect of life, from the economy to public services, from cultural diversity to international relations. The loss of immigrants would reshape the UK in ways many of us haven't even considered. Healthcare systems would collapse, innovation would slow down, and the cost of living would skyrocket. The very things that make the UK thrive would start to unravel, and it would struggle to maintain its position as a global leader. But it's not just about statistics or economic losses. It's about the emotional and social impact. Communities would fracture, and the UK's cultural identity would be left with a void that's hard to fill. Immigrants aren't just numbers on a spreadsheet. They are part of the fabric that makes the UK vibrant, diverse, and dynamic. The bottom line is that immigrants play an irreplaceable role in shaping the UK's future. If they were to leave, the nation would face a struggle to recover and rebuild. So the next time you think about immigration, remember that it's about much more than just policies. It's about the people who help keep the UK running and thriving. We've put a lot of effort into bringing you this eye-opening content, and now we want to hear from you. How would the UK change without immigrants? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. And if you found this video valuable, hit subscribe. It's just one click, but it means the world to us.